Today on Clubhouse Gas, I'm going to go see Dr. Marshall. We got to do something about this shoulder pain. Stay tuned. We're lucky enough to be joined by friend of the show and director of sports medicine here at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, David Marshall, and his son Grant. Guys, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us back.
Today I want to talk about something that I've never heard of until today. I've heard of Little League elbow, but not Little League shoulder. What is Little League shoulder?
Well, Little League shoulder is another one of those pesky growth plate ailments. It seems to affect Little League baseball players between the ages of 8 and 13 when their growth plates are still open, and it's another one of those growth plate injuries. Rather than the elbow, the knee, the heel, this occurs at the top of the shoulder.
Why don't we use this good-looking model we got here and show us exactly what's going on?
Well, in a nutshell, there's really two different types of growth plates we have in our body. One growth plate is called an apophysis, and that's a growth plate that serves as an anchor point for muscles and tendons. So the Little League elbow, Osgood-Schlatters disease, Sever's disease, other growth plate problems in the knee are called apophyses, where this growth plate is a little more important. It's called an epiphysis, and that growth plate is made up of a cartilage bar that is found at the ends of all of our long bones in our body. And those growth plates are very important because what they will do is lay down layer after layer after layer of new bone, and that's what allows our bones to grow in length. So if we injure those growth plates, we have to be concerned about the bone prematurely stopping growth.
So where you told us in a previous show that we could, even with a little bit of pain, the kid could go and play, they're not going to hurt themselves anymore, this might not be the
Absolutely
case.
not. If kids have Little League shoulder, if they have an injury to the growth plate at the top of the humerus or the arm bone, then we really have to be a little more aggressive and much more careful with treating these kids. We recommend that they do not throw for a period of sometimes of 6 to 8 weeks. I tell the kids this is like a broken arm. Now it's not like your arm broke in half that happens when you fall off the monkey bars, but in terms of the growth plate, it is a fracture of that growth plate.
Well, while we've got Grant here with us, why don't you show us exactly what it is that causes it?
This is where they hurt. A lot of the older kids will complain of rotator cuff pain. The high school pitchers, the college pitchers, they'll complain of pain more on the top of the shoulder, sometimes back behind the shoulder. But the young athletes that have Little League shoulder, they complain of pain more down at the top of the arm. So they'll grab their arm or they'll point here, and that's a very concerning complaint if they come in with that. What happens anatomically is the rotator cuff muscles from the back attach right above the growth plate, right about here. And when they throw, that follow-through phase of throwing, there's an awful lot of traction or torque forcing the shoulder this way. So the momentum's going that way, the rotator cuff muscles are pulling that way, and that's what sets up that traction force on the growth plate, and over time that growth plate will actually separate, and that's the fracture, what causes the pain.
So it's not actually the act of throwing, it's the act of follow-through?
Yes, it's the deceleration phase of throwing, where when the kids, when they're in that cocking phase or acceleration, they're much more likely to get pain in the elbow, but as they're coming through and the rotator cuff muscles in the back contract to try to slow that shoulder down, similar to a parachute on a dragster, when the muscles are pulling backwards, momentum's going forwards, that puts way too much stress on that growth plate, and sometimes it fails.
Well, you talked about how to prevent with the Little League, how to prevent here, but if it's a follow-through thing, is there any way to prevent it, or is it one of those freak accidents?
Well, you really can't prevent it other than watching the pitch count. So again, this is an overuse injury, but it doesn't involve a muscle or a tendon or a ligament. It involves a growth plate, and the best way to treat an overuse injury, like we said, is to underuse it. You underuse it. So minimize pitches. Watch the position they're playing when they're not pitching, such as shortstop, catcher, third base. A lot of times in youth baseball, the better athletes are the pitchers, and when they're not pitching, they don't sit on the bench or go to the bullpen to wait for their next start. We put them in a very important position, like catcher, third base, shortstop.
Well, Grant, go ice down, Hoss. Me and Dad are going to talk a little more. Now we know what Little League shoulder is. What exactly are the symptoms? How do we start recognizing that this is a problem?
Well, the most important symptom, I think, is pain. That we've been encouraging these kids that have elbow issues and shoulder issues and they throw, they really shouldn't try to throw through the pain. Some of the growth plate problems, like in the heel and the knee, it's okay to endure some discomfort, but the shoulder and the elbow in young throwers, they really should not throw with pain. Unfortunately, one of the common things that brings them into the office is decreased performance, that they may not come in because their shoulder aches a little bit. They come in because they lose control, they lose velocity, they can't get the ball near the plate with the zip that they used to. So unfortunately, that's what brings them in rather than the discomfort.
And then you're saying unfortunately because it's too late?
Well, it's too late, and of course I want kids to seek medical attention because they have pain, not because they lose performance.
Right.
And unfortunately, it's the latter that usually brings them in.
You're not here to keep a kid throwing 70 miles an hour. You're here to keep a kid healthy and from hurting.
Exactly.
So that makes perfect sense.
Individual health of the athletes always takes top precedence over success of the team or success of the league.
And we here at Clubhouse Gas could not agree more.
Good.
So we know what it is, all right? We've talked a little bit about what causes it, but could you expound a little bit on the idea of the follow through and the extension of that growth plate?
Yeah, the growth plate in Little League shoulder is, remember, it's not one of those apophyseal growth plates. It's not really an anchor point for a muscle or a tendon. It's actually the growth plate at the top of the arm bone or the humerus that's going to contribute to the arm getting longer. So with these types of growth plates, we have to be a little more aggressive with encouraging or requiring rest for these kids. If they have that type of injury to the wrist, they leave my office with a cast. If they have that type of injury to the growth plate in the ankle, they leave my office with a cast. Unfortunately, that's too high up in the elbow. I really can't put a cast on their arm unless I include their head, and that's not a very nice thing to do. So we really try to encourage these kids to stop throwing, and I like to use a sling. I think a sling, number one, acts as a nice reminder that they can't pick up their 800-pound book bag with their arm. They can't pick up that ball and whip it back to their buddy during PE class during Texas battle ball. They can't open car doors and use it. So it pretty much acts as a nice reminder and allows that shoulder to rest, which is exactly what it needs.
Is there a specific motion? Like we talk about, with Little League elbow, there are some different motions that may enhance the Little League elbow. Is this purely an overuse, or is there a way that the kids can have a poor motion that would enhance their chance of getting Little League
I think
shoulder?
it is an overuse injury, and it's like we said before. It's not necessarily from a muscle pulling on that growth plate like Osgood Schlatters or the elbow, but what it is, it's a traction force during the deceleration or the follow-through phase of throwing. We've already talked about the elbow. When the kids are back in this position, it puts a lot of torque and stress on that growth plate there, but Little League shoulder is during the follow-through phase. And the problem is there's a traction force set up at that cartilage bar or that growth plate. Momentum is going forward. The rotator cuff muscles that come from the back have to pull to slow the arm down, so momentum doesn't allow your shoulder to dislocate off the front of the socket. So with the momentum going forward, the rotator cuff muscles pulling backwards, that's what sets up that tugging, and what happens is the growth plate gives, and they actually get a separation or a fracture of that growth plate.
Is there anything that a kid could do to accelerate that process, such as dropping out of the slot or maybe throwing a poor curveball too early as far as putting more pressure on the shoulder, or is it just
I think all those things can be a factor. The main thing, as it is with Little League elbow, is pure volume. The kid with the absolute dead-on perfect mechanics, there's still going to be a number of pitches where that growth plate's going to fail. If the kid has lesser mechanics, or they drop down too soon, or they may open up their hips too soon, and that allows their shoulder to lag behind, then they have to use a lot more torque and stress to catch that shoulder up during the throwing motion. So clearly, proper mechanics is the first place to start, and then we also worry about volume after that. Curveballs, breaking pitches, well, that's kind of gotten a bad rap in its Little League elbow. We can talk about that on another show, but I don't think curveballs or breaking pitches per se have a lot to do with the shoulder. It's volume.
Yeah, that's a big muscle group too.
Volume and velocity.
We talk about putting the kids in a sling. How else do you treat Little League shoulder?
Well, the sling actually rests. That's the most important thing we can do for an overuse injury is to avoid the offending activity. So the sling takes care of that. I like icing. It's an inflammatory process. It's an actual fracture of the arm. So ice is the way to go. Kids can do what's called ice cup massage, where they take a styrofoam coffee cup and fill it to the top with water, freeze it, peel back an inch of paper around the bottom of the cup, then they can do some circular massage over that shoulder. They shouldn't need to do this a lot because remember, they're not allowed to have pain. This is one of those injuries where you cannot throw with pain, so I don't want them needing to ice their shoulder every day. That means they're doing too much. There's also anti-inflammatory medicines such as Advil or Motrin or Aleve that might get them through the first couple nights when they're sore. But avoidance of throwing till the thing completely heals, sometimes 6 to 8 weeks, is the best way to treat this.
My kid's got a Little League shoulder. Can he pitch tonight?
Absolutely not. If he's got Little League shoulder, he definitely cannot pitch. He needs to go to the game in the sling. The glove needs to stay locked in the trunk so they don't sneak out there and catch in a batting practice. He cannot throw.
What kind of time frame are we looking at?
Well, 6 to 8 weeks. I like to see the kids back in about a month, and if they do what we tell them and they really don't cheat and keep their arm in the sling, oftentimes they're pain-free in a period of a month. And then we start a rehab program in the sports medicine gym to look at their mechanics and slowly reintroduce throwing to that freshly healed growth plate. So it's usually about another 3 to 4 weeks after that they're starting to throw.
Well, Doc, Thank you so much. We really
My pleasure.
appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
That's going to wrap it up for us today. We'll see you right back here next time for another great edition of Clubhouse Gas.